What's going on, everyone? Fearless Football Forecast here. This is going to be the number one up-and-coming fantasy and NFL news podcast. I'm Claw. I'm here with Jay Kurt, and you're probably wondering, who the hell are these two guys? Well, we're just lifelong best friends who always talk about football or fantasy, and we figure we talk about it enough. Why not spread the word to you?
Yeah, I think one of the things that in my opinion, would be most endearing about us is the conversations that we're going to have are the same conversations that we would have in real life, except I expect them to be a little more civil than usual.
Yeah, we're not going to put on the fist fighting today, but we're here. I got the fantasy football champion trophy, the reigning, defending, undisputed world heavyweight fantasy champion. And so basically the main topic of today's show is going to be our 10 hot takes, because we figure in an introduction show, we're not going to bore you talking about our division predictions or our fantasy rankings. We'll do those down the line, and we're going to do a mock draft coming up on the channel soon. But today we're going to do our 10 hot takes. That way you can kind of see where our heads are at and see right off the bat in episode 1 of this podcast if you agree with us or not.
Yeah, I think it's good to kind of let everybody know what they're getting into here. We have some takes that, we're like anybody else. Everybody has convictions that might not necessarily make the most sense, but there's a path to it, and we feel that way, and we're going to, we're Fearless Football Forecast. We're going to let it be known.
Exactly. And before we do that, we are going to touch on the two main parts of NFL news right now, which are two big free agents. And both of them weren't traded like we thought they were going to be. They both actually got cut. And so it's really up to them on where they're going to go next. And we're talking about Dalvin Cook and DeAndre Hopkins. Which one do you want to talk about first?
Let's do Cook since he's the newest one. Dalvin Cook, that situation to me is funny. I'm not really sure what the Vikings are doing. They're trying to trade away their best defensive players. They're cutting one of their workhorse running back. What's funny with Cook is they already came out and said that he's going to take his time to decide where he'll go. But I think deep down, I guess we'll find out what you think, but I think we all know where he's going to end up. There's really only two possibilities for most people.
Yeah, I would say Miami. I think anyone would say Miami. I think that would be the best move for Cook, for fantasy football, and just overall for the NFL. I think that offense would just be insanely explosive. Miami doesn't really have anyone. I know that they just drafted Devin Achane. But obviously, based on the jersey that I'm wearing, I would like him to come to the Dallas Cowboys. And personally, I'm not a Tony Pollard guy. So I would love to have Cook. But yes, I would agree with you that it's probably an 80-20 split right now that he's going to go to the Dolphins. And as far as the Vikings go, I wouldn't necessarily say that they are, completely forfeiting. They do have Alexander Mattison, who they showed confidence in by actually signing to an extension. They're bringing in a new offensive coordinator. They just drafted Addison, so it's going to be a very pass-heavy offense. So going to be a lot of mouths to feed. KJ Osborne's still there. He had a decent year last year. They have Hawkinson, and obviously Jefferson, the best wide receiver in the league. So I wouldn't say that they're giving up completely on offense, but as far as Cook goes, I think he'll be great in Miami if he is signed.
Yeah, I agree. One more thing before we move on from this. With the Vikings, do you see Madison becoming Cook and being the workhorse back?
I see him being the workhorse back for probably the first 6 weeks, and then I could see it becoming a committee. McBride is okay. I don't really see him being that great, and there's not really anyone else that I would fear on the depth chart. And since they got rid of Cook, it's not like they're going to sign Zeke or anything. Madison was good pretty much every game that Cook didn't play. He had solid games, and they clearly like him if they re-signed him. So I don't see a world where he's going to be bad. I don't think he's going to be a world beater or anything, but I think he'll be serviceable for what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I think it's going to be more of a workhorse situation personally, but I think they'll be okay in the run game, and obviously they have so many passing weapons. That's going to be their main focus. But I guess we should jump into D-Hop, which to me is – I don't really understand, because they were coming out with all these reports like, he'll take less money to play for a contender. He spoke with the Bills. He spoke with the Chiefs. Nothing happened. Now he's going to to visit the Titans this weekend and the Patriots next week. It's kind of like he's talking out of both sides of his mouth here. You know what I mean? Like, do you want to get paid, or do you want to be a contender? You would think a guy like him who's made his millions, not to say you shouldn't make as much money as you can. I would love to make his millions of dollars as well. But, if you can win a Super Bowl, that, your legacy, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think in Hopkins' mind, he's played, if you don't remember when he was with the Texans for that first stint, he had about 14 different quarterbacks, and he was still an elite receiver. And then he had that security with Kyler, but it didn't end up actually being security as Kyler got hurt all the time. So yeah, I agree. The Titans and Patriots are both very, very strange. I don't see why the Titans would do it. I don't think that they're trying to think of a contender mindset, and I don't know why they would throw money away for Hopkins. I'm not saying they wouldn't get production out of him, but I mean, they have Chigakonkwu right now. They got Treylon Burks last year. Derrick Henry they're probably going to run the hell out of Derrick Henry this year because they know that he's done after this. And the Patriots, I mean, it would be a typical Belichick thing to get a receiver later in the year, but I don't know. I mean, why would they do that? I personally think that the Patriots should tank. I don't know why they should try and win, and I don't think they're going to win many games with Mac Jones this year. So I don't know. If I'm D-Hop, I'm going right to Kansas City. I don't care what the money is because he should probably want to win. Like you said, he said that before. Could you think of any other suitors? I'm sure a bunch are going to pop up.
Yeah, so I mean, I think everyone is going to at least test the waters. At this point in the year, I mean, everyone can make cap space, but there's not a lot of teams that have cap space. I think he should go to the Chiefs. And like I mentioned earlier, Chiefs, Bills, he should go to one of those two teams because at this point in his career, he's got all the stats. If he gets a ring, he's basically a lock for the Hall of Fame at that point. Well, not a lock, but, I think that it would definitely help his credentials. It's funny, to a point that you were talking about earlier with the Titans, after I originally thought he was going to the Chiefs, but after seeing what's been going on, I personally think he is going to end up in the Titans, on the Titans. I think that while they know they're going to suck, and I think they're going to suck too, I think that, they'll give him a number one so that way he's not completely, swimming without a paddle.
I mean, I think you and I are both Levis guys in general. I mean, I think if Levis gets the reins earlier and he actually pans out to be what we think he can be, they maybe could still win a few games. I mean, I'm not going to completely count out Will Levis just because of his attitude and the fact that he eats, mayo in his coffee. Like, I think that's the dumbest thing to slip in a draft over that. I mean, the guy is a physical specimen. He's got a great deep ball. We'll see. I wouldn't be surprised, especially like you said, if they bring in D-Hop, that offense is explosive. What quarterback that's a rookie doesn't want to come in and know that if he's a little bit flustered, he can hand the ball off to the most dominant running back in recent memory? I mean, it's perfect. It could be a really good scenario. The Titans could have won the draft with Levis. I personally had him as my third favorite quarterback this year, so it's possible. You never know.
Yeah, I guess we'll.
And that might be a hot take, that might be a hot take in itself. You know what I mean? And the transition into our hot takes. It's time for our top 10, and these are in no particular order. They kind of seem a little bit. We didn't intend for this to happen, but they kind of seem like they're getting progressively more insane as they go on. So stick with us. I'm sure we're probably pretty accurate. I mean, this man over here called Patrick Mahomes way before he was anything. And I can eat my words by saying that I thought Prescott was better as a Cowboys fan, but that was stupid. But I'm sure many of you would have thought that as well if you saw a rookie quarterback get benched behind Alex Smith, but ended up being genius. So you want to start with your first hot take?
All right, yeah. So I'll jump in with my first hot take here. And my first take is going to be that I believe that the Browns are going to win the AFC North. I think this is more of a hot take because of how competitive that division is going to be. I actually really think that the entire division is going to be extremely competitive. But in my opinion, you have the foundation there. So obviously Myles Garrett, top 5, top 3 pass rusher in the league. Guy's an animal. But now you bring in Zadarius Smith to put on the other side of him. I know they had Jadeveon Clowney, but like we all know, he showed flashes, but he would take off all the time. He just wasn't in it. Smith, I think, is going to prove to be a more consistent heir apparent or partner, I should say, on the other side. Continuing on the defense, I love Joker. I can't pronounce his name. Jeremiah Owusu, however you say his name, from Notre Dame. I like that they have a playmaker in the middle. Yeah, I like that they have a playmaker in the middle. He's ball hawk. He's always around the ball, tackles, all that kind of stuff. And then I think their secondary, is high upside, a lot of talent. Obviously, Denzel Ward, first-round pick Newsome, showed flashes. Delpit and, Thornhill are, Thornhill's technically a veteran now, but he's one of those guys. He's on and off. But I actually really like the signing of McLeod. When he was an Eagle, he was one of those veteran leaders on the team. And I think that's going to help kind of, settle those guys in to accept more of the role. Now, that's just defensively. Offense is where I really think this is where they're going to make their mark. Obviously, Watson, last year he struggled. I think full offseason, a real offseason, no distractions, none of that bullshit from last year. I think that he is going to make a serious impact or serious step forward. I mean, before, 2-3 years ago, whenever he played last, he was third, fourth best quarterback in the entire league. And to go along with that, I love the offensive line. Both tackles are great. Both guards are great, solid center. And I love the weapons. Nick Chubb, one of the best backs in the league. And I think their receiving core as a core is fantastic. Amari, we both love Amari. Loved him since he was coming out. Obviously, he's a top 5 pick. But, Amari is a true number 1. I think Elijah Moore is a versatile slot guy. Donovan Peoples-Jones, I like his game as well. And Njoku. I just really think that O-line, the run game that they'll be able to have, the receivers, and that defense, I think that, I think they're going to win that division this year.
I mean, I like the take. I definitely do like the take a lot. I personally like the Browns a lot this year, and I think that right away you address the only concern with the take, and it's just that how damn stacked that division is. I personally think even that the Steelers are going to take a big step forward this year. I like what they did in free agency, and I love their draft. But it's just crazy because they have these 4 great teams, 3 elite teams. I would put the Browns, honestly, like people count them out, like you said. You just described most of their roster, and they have an amazing quarterback who in most divisions would be the best quarterback in the division. But I can really see all 3 of those teams, the Bengals, Browns, and Ravens, being neck and neck. It's so insane, and I'm sure we could have an entire episode about how stacked the AFC is versus the NFC. I mean,
sure.
It's ridiculous how stacked the AFC is, that all 4 of these teams realistically would make the playoffs and probably be seated high in the NFC. And speaking about how shitty the NFC is, that leads to my first hot take, and that is that the New Orleans Saints will have the best record in the NFC. Now, I'm just going to preface this by saying that I'm not saying that they will win the NFC. I could easily see them being bounced in the second round of the playoffs, but I'm talking about most overall wins. And the big reason for that is Derek Carr. Of course, Derek Carr, a phenomenal quarterback. He's one of the best deep ball throwers in the league. The organization basically showed by signing Brian Edwards and Foster Moreau, 2 guys who previously played with Carr, that they are all in with Carr. I really like the other signings that they had this year, especially with the Alvin Kamara situation, bringing in Jamal Williams, who can basically do exactly what Mark Ingram did for the Saints when they had Drew Brees and when they were in the playoffs. I enjoyed their draft a lot. I thought that they played it very safe, but that's what they needed to do because they're not necessarily trying to be super explosive in their rebuild of their defensive line. They've always had great defensive line coach, and getting Brees, I thought he was a steal at that point in the draft, and Foskey was a very safe pick. They're bringing back the exact same offensive line. They didn't do a bad job last year, considering Andy Dalton was under center for most of it. And let's not forget, last year they brought in Marcus May and Tyrann Mathieu, both great safeties. The defense is great. The defense is so good, and that's the crazy thing. Obviously, having Cam Jordan still there, Demario Davis still there, and the craziest thing is that Derek Carr has never played with a defense that ranked better than 20th in points per game allowed. And the Saints were 4th. The Saints have a great defense. It is crazy to think that the Saints defense, despite being on the field so much last year, actually really held teams and was still in the top 5 in defense. And so I think that's going to be huge. Derek Carr is going from playing every year against Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, and Justin Herbert to Kyle Trask or Baker Mayfield, Desmond Ridder, and a rookie Bryce Young. And obviously people would say Bryce Young is great. However, the nice thing is the Saints get their away game against Carolina the second week of the season. So Bryce Young is still going to be settling in. Let's just talk about their offense real quick. I mean, you're combining one of the best deep ball guys in the league with a dynamic weapon like Chris Olave, a healthy Michael Thomas, a fast sophomore in Rashid Shaheed, very hard name to say, a new perimeter threat they acquired who I really like this year, and in Dynasty, A.T. Perry. And that's without even factoring in, if Kamara does come back, his pass catching ability from the backfield. I mean, I think that if you're looking at them just winning games, take a look at their schedule. The Cowboys and Eagles are both still going to be very, very good this year. I think that they're going to void out. They each might have around 12 to 13 games. I could see the Saints pulling ahead with 14 or getting 13 and just sweeping their division completely. And I also see the 49ers taking a step back this year. The division is horrible. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so this is actually, I think both of us have kind of been Derek Carr, not necessarily apologists, because I think he gets overhated, but, we've been Derek Carr supporters. I mean, is he as good as those top tier guys? No, but he is one of the better, game manager, if you have the pieces around you, can win games. Your biggest point, which I completely agree with, he's never had a good defense, once. It's actually sad. I feel bad for the guy. The Saints defense is phenomenal. They've added pieces, so hypothetically they should get better. And I think that what's nice with the Saints in particular, with bringing in 2 defensive linemen, which it's always scary. You never know how a rookie's going to play. But Cameron Jordan is such a good leader. I think that he will he'll be able to bring them into the league, and they'll be able to be productive year one. So I'm going to go into my next hot take. So this is number 3 overall for us. It might sound like a bit of a bias here, but I believe that A.J. Brown is going to lead the league in receiving yards this year. Plenty of talented guys. You said it at the top of the show. Jefferson, best receiver in the league. Chase, Kupp. All those guys obviously are going to be in the mix. I think that obviously, and we saw it last year. I mean, we've known it his whole career. He's just been with the Titans. Last year, he was more prolific because he was with better teammates, better quarterback. That A.J. Brown is one of the best receivers in the league. There's no doubt about it. Obviously, he's got a great quarterback. Hurts is not afraid to put it, throw it up, put it in a tight spot. And I think that that's, obviously a great thing. He's not afraid to throw it deep. He's not afraid to put it in a tight window. And A.J. Brown is great all over the field, no matter what you do with him. And not just a great quarterback, a great offense in general. Obviously, the offensive line is going to give Hurts more time to find him. The run game, having Devonta Smith, having Dallas Goedert on that team makes it so hard to double team A.J. Brown. Oh, and sorry. The last thing I wanted to say is, and this is one of the more important points in my opinion, is last year, the Eagles were great. But one of the things that everyone said, they said it all year long, which was a valid point. I thought it too. They had such a cupcake schedule. And you get the schedule you get. So, I can't, you can't really say anything. We did our best with what we got. But this year we have one of the hardest schedules in the league, maybe the toughest. I know it's like our whole division is like we have 4 of the top 6 hardest schedules, but I think it's going to make it to where the Eagles are going to have to pass more often. And, they're to try and win games. And obviously that's going to help A.J. Brown out a lot.
So I'm sure you were expecting me to disagree with this take.
Yeah.
And I'm not disagreeing it with any form of hatred whatsoever now. I can see A.J. Brown leading the league in receiving touchdowns much more than I can see him leading the league in yards. And it's less to do with him as a player and just more to do with, like you said, I think, like how you were mentioning Goddard and Devonta Smith. I think Smith is going to have his best year of his career so far this year. I think that Smith is going to be more the beneficiary of those tight games, and bringing in Deandre Swift, who has the pass catching ability like no running back the Eagles have had in the last 3 years. I think that that's going to eat away at some of the target share that went Brown's way. The other thing with Brown, and I'm not trying to curse him at all, but last year was the first season that he actually played every single game. So can he do that again in a 17-game season? We shall see. My only other thing would be that Tyreek Hill exists. And as much as I love Justin Jefferson, I do think that he takes a slight step back this year. I think Tyreek is going to be unbelievable. I don't know if you remember this, but last year, before Tua got the first of 3 concussions, Tyreek actually was on pace to break the all-time receiving yard record in a season. He had like 1,000 yards by week 5 last year. I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous. I could see Tyreek Hill breaking that record this year. McDaniel's already saying how he's taking leaps forward. But I wouldn't be shocked if it was Brown. I just don't see how someone with his build could do it necessarily for the entire season. What was he in yards last year? Do you know?
What was his rank?
Yeah.
I don't know off the top of my head. I think he had around like 1,400 though. He was among, there was like that gap. There was, Hill, Chase, Chase was injured. Hill, Jefferson, and then like the gap, and then there was a couple more like Waddle, Brown. He was in that tier of receiving yards.
Okay, gotcha. So it is possible.
Yeah, he's a deep threat. So he's a big receiver, but he's kind of like his old teammate DK, where they're extremely dangerous downfield, and that's hard to find a big receiver.
It definitely is. It definitely is. I mean, I could see it. He could have the 2015 Des Bryant season, or he does both. And on to my next, which I would actually consider my most confident here. It is Lamar Jackson winning the MVP. I mean, if the man doesn't get injured, I just don't see a world where it's possible, even if the Chiefs go undefeated. He was the MVP before when he didn't have this receiving core. He's evolved every single year as a passer, even though his weapons got worse and worse. Since Lamar entered the league, there have been 50 quarterbacks with at least 50 dropbacks in the fourth quarter in one-score games in a 2-minute situation, and Lamar ranked second in QBR, third in completion percentage, and second in rush yards of any player, including running back, during those situations. So the people that love to say that Lamar can't pass, that's a slight debunk right there. Also, you have to realize Lamar was playing with absolute scrubs last year. Rashad Bateman was only healthy for 4 weeks last year, 3.5 really, and you saw what he was able to do. And now after adding in Odell Beckham Jr. on a pretty big deal, and Zay Flowers, who I know you and I both really like, this offense should be very explosive. I mean, before he was injured last year, he was making up for 85% of his team's total yards, which is 20% more than his MVP season when he had 65%. So if he can keep that up, there's no reason why he shouldn't dominate. I mean, he should greatly and vastly improve his passing stats. He might genuinely have the most insane statistical season ever. Like, I would not be surprised if Lamar Jackson has the best season of all time from a yards perspective. He might have the most passing and rushing yards combined ever. And then they'll still be bounced in the first round of the playoffs. But I definitely think Lamar wins MVP this year. I just don't see it possible unless he gets injured. And that's without even mentioning once Mark Andrews and the offensive line and the new defense that has started to step it up. So you might be able to run a little bit more later on in games.
Yeah, listen, man, we might find out later that I don't agree with this take per se, but I can't really deny that there's as good of a chance as anybody else in the league. I mean, the guy is, one of them. He is probably the craziest talent in the entire NFL. I mean, he's so fast. He's so dynamic in the running game, and he's gotten so much better, over the years as a passer. And like you said, I'm in on Flowers as players. I like Flowers. I like Bateman. I like Odell. Obviously, they're not all going to be great. And Mark Andrews is one of the most reliable tight ends in the league. So I definitely do see a path for this. I do think my one caveat, the one point you made, which I forgot about this because obviously he was injured later in the year. So as the year goes on, you kind of forget about early season things sometimes. I remember that stat that he was 85% of his team's offense, which is if that was over the course of an entire season, that would be the most ridiculous stat ever. I think that since they have a better defense and since they have a better passing game, Dobbins is going to be fully healthy. I think that he's still going to rush for at least 800 yards. Like he's not going to not run the ball. That's just ridiculous. But I think that they might, and they just paid him. I think that they might say, listen, there's plays that you can't not run. Fourth quarter, game on the line, design run. Pocket collapses, make a play. I just don't think that he's going to come. I mean, obviously, it's crazy that it happened already. I don't think it's going to be quite that much of the offense all by himself.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing as your Browns situation earlier. For me, my biggest fear is just that they don't win the division, and because of that, he doesn't become the MVP. I mean, like you said, the Browns have a very good chance. The Bengals have a good chance with their upgraded offensive line, and Burrow now coming into it really in his fourth season. So we'll see. It's just the damn AFC. If any of these guys were in the NFC, they would run roughshod through it.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so I'm going to jump into my third hot take, and this one I'm going to switch it up a little bit. We said previously we're going to get into real football and we're going to get into fantasy football a little bit. This is a fantasy football take. I think that Chris Olave will be a top 5 fantasy receiver. And this is one of those things I've always loved. I loved Chris Olave coming out. I actually, in a league we're in, I have him as a keeper. But the more I think about it, the more I love him. Obviously, he's got the talent. We saw it first off, played in college with one of the most insane receiving cores ever, and he was extremely productive there. He comes to the NFL, immediately takes over as the number 1 receiver. He got dinged up a little bit, which is one of my more heavier concerns with him with that. But the talent is there. If you look last year, he was he's the obvious number 1 target. He was 4th in deep targets in the league, 8th in average depth of target. I think you want the ball to go downfield. That's how big plays, they win you weeks in fantasy. And I think that Chris Olave can do that. I also think, like I said, he's going to be peppered with targets. And really what it comes down to, and we spoke to it earlier with your hot take, is the quarterback upgrade. Andy Dalton, when I was younger, when he was on the Bengals, it was all good. But obviously last year he was a shell of himself. And not that he was ever one of the best quarterbacks ever, but, he was a shell of himself, which was really saying something. And we spoke to how much we like Derek Carr. We think that he can be productive and help lead this offense. Chris Olave was ranked 53rd in the league last year in catchable target rate, which means there were 52 receivers in the NFL that, on average, every pass thrown to them, they were more likely to catch it because it was overthrown, it hit the dirt, stuff like that. I think that number will significantly spike this year with Derek Carr. He's way more accurate. He's way more consistent. And like I said, if he keeps up the depth of target numbers and the efficiency can spike, I think it's just fantasy football fun in the making.
Yeah, you're not going to hear any argument with me on that one. I'm completely with you. I absolutely love Olave. I think he's a lock this year to be a wide receiver 1. Top 5 is possible. That is a hot take, definitely, but I would see it happening. I would love to see him be a top 10 guy. I'm trying to reach for him in every single league that I'm not in with you, because I know that you're going to get him first in most leagues. Like we already talked earlier about how much we both like Derek Carr. This podcast could be called the Derek Carr podcast for all we are concerned. But like the fact that you mentioned that he's 53rd, that's going to go down significantly with Derek Carr. I just really, even out of college, I liked his ball skills. I really liked his route running. I think he's a perfect fit for the Saints offense that you're going to have, bigger body guys like A.T. Perry. You're going to have Michael Thomas running underneath. It really should open up for Olave. And also having the big tight ends, just the smoke screens. I could see Olave racking up some touchdown numbers too, which he was lacking in last year. That was another thing. And he still finished with solid fantasy production, and he had many boom games, but just some bust games as well. So this year, if he gets the consistency, I can definitely see that happening. And I guess I wasn't going to do it next, but I'll go to my fantasy take, which is going to look a million times more ridiculous after you just did a very, very solid fantasy take. And I'm going to change it up a little bit, actually. It's going to be Jameson Williams being this year's breakout star. Now, I'm seeing articles that's saying that this gambling suspension that he has, that 6 games, might actually be reduced or just completely wiped. And if it is completely wiped, then I will go with my initial take that I had written down before I knew about the gambling suspension, and that is that Jameson Williams outperforms Amon-Ra St. Brown when he returns. Jameson Williams is a freak. I don't know if people are forgetting this. I've seen him go undrafted in a lot of mocks or late teens when the guy could seriously produce top 20 receiver numbers. I'm not going to go out here and say that he's going to be a top 10 guy. It wouldn't baffle me, but I can definitely see him being a high-end wide receiver too. The Lions drafted him with the 12th pick overall despite knowing that he had a torn ACL. They went into this not realizing that he was, like, they didn't think he was going to play. So why, as of the football community, are we hating on the guy for not being on the field last year? And he, even though he did play 6 games, he was mostly just out there running routes. He only had 9 targets last year. And with his 1 catch, he had 41-yard deep bomb for a touchdown. If we see a lot of that this year, he's going to be a phenomenal fantasy football player. I mean, he's got the size profile to Jefferson and Chase. His separation is second to none. Actually, literally second to none, as he had the most yards in college that were deemed open when he did play. He had 1,300 of his 1,500 yards were deemed open. His route running is just amazing. And with the Lions, they didn't sign anyone in free agency, which shows that they are very confident in Williams. And they got rid of DJ Chark, who signed with the Panthers, and that's leaving up around a 16% target share. Amon-Ra also does a lot of his damage underneath and in the red zone. So he's going to be a really good complement as the deep threat. I don't know. I think his talent is better than Amon-Ra's. Personally, I'm not sold on Amon-Ra long term. I think he had a great season last year. I don't think that the Lions had expected that at all out of him, and that's why they drafted Jameson Williams. Williams has been working out recently with Calvin Johnson. And if this gambling suspension does get stopped, I will say it right now, he will be a wide receiver 2 in fantasy. And if he isn't, then he'll be a wide receiver 2 whenever he comes back throughout the rest of the season. I like what the Lions are doing. I really do. I think they're trending in an upward trajectory. Getting Jahmyr Gibbs, another Alabama teammate, that's just going to do wonders. And personally, just from the eye test, back in Alabama, I thought that Williams was the best out of him, Smith, and Waddle. So I've been on Williams since day one. It sucks that he got injured, but sometimes you get to capitalize. And for those of you in dynasty leagues doing startups right now, he's going very late. So take advantage of that and draft him. You're not going to miss anything. That's the thing. His value is going to be incredible. So even if he doesn't do anything, what is he going to cost you? A bench piece? You'd be drafting some guy who's getting 7 points a game, you know? I'd rather have 30 or 0 than 7 at the point that I'm drafting him.
Right. Nah, this is one of those takes where, you know, I like what you're saying. I personally am a believer in Amon-Ra. Not necessarily. I mean, I think he's good in the NFL. I just think that he's going to get peppered with so many targets. It's going to be really hard for Williams. I think the talent is there. He's just going to have to be extremely efficient. But like you said, the talent, you know, he's a very, very good receiver. You know, it was weird when he came, but when you really think about it, he came back. He only had, what'd you say, 9 targets, the 1 catch, which was a bomb touchdown. I mean, what more can you really expect? The guy was injured through, you know, like he's a rookie, first off. Rookie receivers, you know, obviously some have great seasons, but it's hard to be a rookie in the NFL. And on top of that, he had an injury. So he was just starting so far back. He finally, you know, he gets his feet wet at the end of the season. And like you said, if he comes back, I didn't know that they were talking about wiping away the gambling the gambling suspension. That would be awesome. I think that I love the Lions this year. I love their offense. I think that their offense is going to be phenomenal. And obviously having Williams for the entire year would make it, you know, that much sweeter over the first 6 weeks. I'm going to jump into my next hot take, which is kind of a 2-parter here. I think that Justin Herbert will be the MVP, and the side to that is that the Chargers will win the division because you're not going to win the MVP if you don't win the division. But let me just speak on him as himself before I get into the entire team. The guy's a stud. This is one that I thought you and I can't wait to hear what you have to say, Mr. Herbert hater over there. He's got a cannon for an arm. He throws it in such tight windows. And I just think, you know, his weapons are phenomenal. Eckler, great runner, great receiver. They drafted Quentin Johnson. You know, whether we think that he's going to be a star or not, he doesn't have to be. He's the third receiver. Imagine having a first-round receiver as your third receiver in your depth. I mean, Keenan Allen, when he's not hurt, this is the biggest thing with the entire Chargers team is injuries, obviously. But when Keenan's on the field, he's great. Williams is always a big play guy. I think Quentin Johnson I think he's going to be, you know, one of those guys who's kind of middling this year. But I like their depth pieces. Guyton is a good deep threat. Josh Palmer has been consistent when needed. Their offensive line is going to have Slater back. So Lindsey was like in and out of the lineup all year. Give him that protection so he has a little more time. And, you know, the guy that replaced Slater, Salyer, however you pronounce his name, I think that, you know, potentially they can move him in the guard. Probably not. They'll probably use him as a swing tackle. So if one of their tackles goes down, there you go. And he played great last year. And the last thing about the offense and why I think Herbert's going to be great this year, Kellen Moore. You got to live the Kellen Moore experience. Yeah. So it's hard when you're living it, I feel like, to kind of separate yourself from things. I think that Kellen Moore is a good, he likes to pass. And in the NFL, that's the best thing you can do. He likes to pass on first downs. He likes to pass on, you know, he'll pass in short yardage situations. He loves to pass. And yes, you need to run the ball, but for an MVP, I don't want you to run the ball that much. I like that he's going to pass. And I think that Kellen Moore is good. I think that part of the reason he couldn't be great is there is times where he just does not adjust. And, you know, you've seen that. I think Dak is good, but I think Herbert is in the tier of those amazing talents. And I think that Herbert will be able to overcome that, hopefully. And then just for the division, you know, again, more injuries. Bosa is going to be back. They have a great edge rushing pair. And, you know, J.C. Jackson should be back. He wasn't good when he played last year, but he played hurt I think he was hurt week 1. So he was playing hurt, and then they shut him down. And Asante Samuel Jr. I love. Michael Davis, when you push him down to the cornerback 3, is great, and obviously Derwin.
Yeah, I'm not gonna honestly. I'm sure you were waiting for me to argue, but I'm not. I mean, it's the same thing. Like you could say that you don't like Lamar, and that's why you don't think that he could do it. Just because I don't like Herbert doesn't mean I don't think he's good. I definitely think, as far as Kellen Moore goes, I think he's going to be a perfect fit for Herbert. I personally, as a Cowboys fan, hated him because of how much he wanted to pass, and I'm not necessarily that confident in Dak Prescott's passing. So there were many situations where I just wanted the ball to be handed to Zeke, and I think that, like you said, he's going to pass even in short situations, and Herbert is a smart enough quarterback and a talented enough quarterback to make those plays work, especially having all 3 of those phenomenal talents at receiver. I personally like Quentin Johnson a lot. He's growing on me every single week. Mike Williams, and they're basically the same exact player. And Keenan Allen's going to be that guy that he goes to on those short out routes. And I think that Allen's going to have a really good year this year. I think that it's far more likely for the Chargers to not win the division. I mean, far more likely for Herbert to be an MVP caliber talent than for the Chargers to win the division just because of Mahomes. And I think that Russell Wilson and the Broncos are going to step up. But like you said, in order to actually get it, you're going to need to win the division. I can't argue with it, though. It's going to be one of the guys. It's got to be Burrow, Herbert, Lamar, or Mahomes, whoever does the best. So you can't really argue a point like that. So I think it's good tape.
Hurts.
Well, yeah, Hurts and Carr, just from a record perspective, they'll be up there. But as far as talent goes, those guys are just leaps beyond everyone else. It's pretty crazy, actually. But yeah, less argument than you thought?
Definitely less argument than I thought, yeah. That's the most positive I've ever heard you in my entire life on Justin Herbert.
I actually do think that Kellen Moore is going to be good for him.
Yeah, no, and that's one of the things. That's truly, I probably should have led with that, honestly. I just think that he's going to be so good for him, and I can't wait to see it.
And another thing I cannot wait to see is our boy, Bijan. We've been talking about Bijan since he was in probably like 7th grade, seriously. I mean, I was waiting on the guy to go to high school, then I was waiting on him to go to college, and he went to Texas, which has always been my number 2 team behind my alma mater, the University of Florida. So I watched him a lot in college. I don't think anyone was expecting him to go as early as he did, but the Falcons clearly knew something, and they may have pulled off a genius move. I don't think that anyone before the NFL draft realized that the Falcons were 2nd in average rushing yards per game, and they ended up being 4th in rushing yards total. Now, that's with a 34-year-old Cordell Patterson and a late-round rookie in Tyler Algier. I immediately Googled when I saw Bijan get drafted to the Falcons. I laughed. I thought it was a horrible landing spot for him. I was personally pissed off. I wanted him to go to a really good team. I thought he was going to go to the Eagles. I thought he was going to go to the Cowboys. I thought he was going to go somewhere where he could be the guy. And then the more I looked at it, and the stats and the upgraded offensive line that the Falcons have brought in this year, they're going to be pretty damn good. I mean, Desmond Ridder is horrible. I don't see much coming from him. But Bijan is going to be run to the dirt. It might suck for his career long term, but I can definitely see Bijan Robinson getting the rushing title this year. It's not impossible for a rookie to do it. Zeke did it in 2016. Bijan was such a sensation in high school and college. He had 2,700 yards and 29 touchdowns in his last 2 seasons at Texas and averaged nearly 6 yards per attempt. The guy is a freak. He's a freak. And once again, in a bad division, it's going to be a lot of games where the only negative thing you could really say is the game script. But I just think that Bijan's the guy. Are you more confident? Seriously, are you more confident in a 3rd and 5 situation with Desmond Ridder throwing the ball or Bijan, who averaged 6 yards a carry, getting that first down? I see them spamming Bijan. They're going to use him out of the backfield. I know earlier when we were talking that you said you could see him, maybe if he doesn't get the rushing title, getting the scrimmage yards title, because I can definitely see that as well. But looking at the odds right now from a Vegas perspective, he's sitting at 6. Do we really think that Bijan is the 6th most likely? We think an not old, but Jonathan Taylor, who hasn't done anything in a couple of years, he's going to do it. We think Austin Eckler, when we were just mentioning the phenomenal passing ability of Justin Herbert, is going to do it. Is Nick Chubb going to do it again? Is Saquon going to do it in this new Giants offense? I don't know. My money's on Bijan. I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I just put 100 on this earlier, actually. So I'm very confident that this actually happens. This is another one that I'm pretty confident in, and even though it is a hot take.
Nice. And I mean, you said it in your breakdown of it. I love Bijan. I mean, I don't think anyone doesn't like the guy's talent. He's phenomenal. Like you also said earlier, my only thing, I think they have a good offensive line. And I don't mind Ritter. I'm excited to see Ritter with having such talent in Bijan to kind of keep the pressure off him. My only thing with the rushing title is how are they going to stack the box and game script. Like I said, I see more of the scrimmage. I think he's going to be extremely active in the passing game. But at the end of the day, could that happen? For sure. He could definitely lead the league in rushing. And I think that no matter what, he's going to have a phenomenal rookie season. All right. So I know you said that you didn't really rank yours in most crazy. I didn't either, but I did save this one for last because it was just so outlandish. I think that most people would think that, but I truly do see a path for this. I think that Nakobe Dean, Philadelphia Eagles linebacker, everyone probably thought this was an Alshon jersey. It's not. It's a Nakobe Dean jersey. I bought it before his rookie year. I'm probably his biggest believer. I actually have a funny story about that I can tell after this. I think that he's going to be a Pro Bowler this year. And I know that's might sound strange to people. Number one, he was a first-round talent. When you look at not everyone, obviously, nothing is 100%, but you look at 90% of NFL draft analysts, they all had him as a first-round player. He fell a little bit, people were scared of the size, but mostly because he had that, I think it was a pec injury or a bicep. I forget exactly what it was, but he had an injury coming out. He's got the talent. He was great in high school, heavily recruited. Obviously, he went to Georgia. He was great in college on one of the best defenses. It's hard to tell. Georgia's past 2 years, which defense is better, but one of the best college defenses ever. And I think he's going to bring that over to the league. One of the things that I love is the situation for him. I think that while our linebacking core isn't great, I think that our defensive line and our quarterbacks are going to make it easier for him to be able to make plays. Obviously, we lost a couple guys in the offseason, Hargrave, but we still have a great defensive line. We added a couple rookies that I personally love. I think that D-line is going to create so much pressure, so much chaos for quarterbacks that Nakobe is going to be able to make plays not only in the run game, but in the pass game. And, he is a leader. He was a leader. People respect him. He demands respect. He was the leader for that Georgia team last year, and he is going to be calling plays he's not calling the plays, but he's relaying the plays for the defense this year. That shows me obviously a great amount of confidence, but he knows the game. And that leads into my next point. Obviously, he didn't have a ton of opportunities last year, but when he did, he made the most of them. If he wasn't making a play, he was around the ball at all times. And it wasn't as much on the defensive side. He really didn't get to play all that much. A couple of games where we had a blowout situation, they threw him in there. But mainly on special teams, he was all over the place. If he didn't make the tackle or recover a fumble recover an onside kick, he was right there ready to lay the guy out. And I think that this year, obviously, he's going to see the bulk of the snaps, and I think he is going to make that leap.
I think that you're saying that that's the craziest one, but I think it's highly likely. I love it. I mean, I personally love Nakobe Dean. He's probably my favorite Eagle, other than Kelsey, obviously, just for his energy. But Nakobe Dean is a phenomenal talent who I got to see live. He was one of the only guys in college that was actually able to cover Pitts because he's so good. He's like if you combined Isaiah Simmons' versatility with Jabril Peppers' versatility and put it in a slightly stronger human being, then that would be Nakobe Dean. Nakobe Dean is a stud. The only concern would be the time on the field. And if that increases, I don't see a world where he's not a Pro Bowler because he is such a phenomenal talent. I don't know how he fell that far in the draft. The Eagles capitalized on it, brought in some more of his teammates this year, and I love it. I really do. I actually do love it a lot.
Do you want to hear my Nakobe Dean story that I have?
Sure,
it's a little. I think it's funny. We'll find out. I don't think I told you this yet, even though it happened last year. So to make a long story short, I have a family friend who he's a very great guy, and every now and then he'll hook me up with tickets to the Eagles games. And this particular time, he hooked me up with really, really good tickets for the Cowboys-Eagles, the Sunday nighter. And, I'm all hyped. I went with my buddy. So we're going to the game. First off, worst traffic in the world that day. It was insane, worse than any other Eagles game in my life. But, I'm repping my Nakobe Dean jersey. I love the guy. Long story short, game's over. So our seats, they have these seats. They're newer. It's like 4 or 5 years old. They have seats right behind the goalposts, and now they have them on the sidelines. So you're not on the field. But
that's where we sat.
Yeah, we sat there for the Eagles practice. So we were in the same spot for the Eagles Cowboys game.
Shit.
So, and the same thing happened at the practice. When the people are walking in, the security makes sure, obviously, you can't walk by. So player safety, of course. So one of the last people going in, I forget who was with him. I think it was a couple. I think it was like Kaiser White. I don't know for sure. But it was 100% Nakobe Dean. And I had my jersey on. I was like, Nakobe. I was wasted, by the way. Free booze. At least 10 Jack and Cokes in me. All boozed up. Nakobe. I turn around. I point to my jersey. He pointed at me. I've never been so happy in my life. All right. So these tickets, they also come with like a little lounge. And where the lounge is, say I'm sitting here, right in front of me, the players are leaving their locker room. It's right next to the Eagles locker room. So, we stayed for a little bit, had another drink, sitting around watching the Eagles leave. Eventually, Nakobe comes out, which he's a very fashionable guy. He's wearing this big hat. It was a funny looking hat. I'd have to show you. I can't even explain it. So again, now I'm drinking even more. I run up. I'm like, Nakobe. He's like, I forget what he did. Oh, he was like, he smiled, and then I went to give him a fist bump. He went to give me a fist bump, and I was so drunk, and I was so excited that I didn't know what to do. So I fist bumped him. Obviously, I knew how to fist bump. What do you think I said to him? I said, I love you, and he looked at me. He was like, this is. He might have a restraining order against me. Eagles fan in the Nakobe Dean jersey, restraining order. But that was probably long-winded, but I find that to be one of the.
Oh no, that's great. That's great. That's hilarious. No, I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so sick. Yeah, those seats are amazing. We got to see AJ Brown's first touchdown catches.
Oh, dude. Yeah, right there too. That was great, man.
Oh my goodness. Well, that was sick. I didn't know about that at all. And moving on to the final one, as we got to wrap up the show before it hits the hour mark, we got the Dallas Cowboys. No, I'm kidding. The Jacksonville Jaguars winning the 2023-24 Super Bowl. I am all in on the Jags this year. I love them. Trevor Lawrence is my guy. He's my keeper in fantasy. They have just done so much. I mean, how the hell do you go from being the first pick overall to the second round of the playoffs within one possession of defeating the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs in one season? The amount of difference that the Jaguars have had since Doug Peterson has come along is insane. I love what they did. I love getting ETN, bringing in Tank Bigsby, who I think is a perfect complement for him. He was one of the better running backs in this draft class, but he isn't being talked about much from like a fantasy or dynasty perspective simply because he's behind ETN. But as far as the team goes, he's going to be that guy who's able to pound the rock in situations that Jacksonville actually failed to convert. Last year, they were really bad within the 5-yard line, and that led to a lot of Trevor Lawrence incompletions. Lawrence is just going to keep taking steps forward. Let's not forget that he was heralded like a Peyton Manning type coming out of college, and he got a lot of crap his first year. He basically had a college coach in Urban Meyer his first season and then an interim coach. And now he's got Doug Peterson, who's a quarterback guru. What the Jags have done in such a short amount of time with limited talent is amazing. If they don't win the Super Bowl this year, I think they're almost a lock to be there next year once they get some more talent on the defensive side of the ball. But as far as the offense goes, they're cooking. They have Christian Kirk. They re-signed Evan Ingram. They just got their new weapon who had a gambling suspension last year, Calvin Ridley, who apparently is delivering hardcore in practice. Like I said, Tank Bigsby. It's a bad division with a lot of teams in a rebuild. Honestly, I would see the Texans as their only competition, but that's not going to happen. I think that the Jaguars win 12 games this year, sneak in as maybe the first or second seed. If they could get that bye, then this is a real possibility. And the craziest thing, too, is looking at Doug Peterson, he kind of did the same thing for the Eagles. And what did Peterson do in his second year with the Eagles? They won a Super Bowl. And what's going to happen with the Jacksonville Jaguars in their second year? They're going to win a Super Bowl. And I think that a big part of it, too, and this is something that I didn't write down and think about until just now because of how much we've been talking about how damn competitive the AFC West and the AFC North are, those guys are going to be beat up. That's going to be a long season of quarterback duels where they go in there, they're down, they have to come back. It's going to be down to the wire, last play of the game situation. That's going to be the AFC North. You're going to have Tua versus Josh Allen versus Aaron Rodgers at the last minute every game, pretty much. You're going to have Mahomes. I think Wilson's going to be a little bit better this year, and the Broncos will be a little competitive. But if not, Mahomes and Herbert are going to beat the shit out of each other with slinging the ball around. You have Burrow, Deshaun Watson, and Lamar Jackson. That's going to be a lot of high-pressure situations that you usually wouldn't run into until the playoffs. They might be a little mentally fatigued. Whereas Trevor Lawrence is going to be out there playing touch football against the AFC South. He is going to be rolling into the playoffs this year. I like it. I think it's going to happen. I mean, they're plus 2,000 right now, Vegas odds. I don't know. What are your thoughts real quick before we wrap up?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen per se, but I definitely don't hate it. Trevor Lawrence, his first year, first off, rookie quarterback, like you said, Urban Meyer was too busy hitting on college chicks instead of coaching the team. And, I'll never say a bad word about Doug Peterson. I think what he did with the Eagles, and like you said, I think he's doing a very similar thing with the Jaguars. If the defense can hold up, they have a lot of talent up front. Josh Allen, Chason, I think they still have. Who am I thinking of? The other, oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. Their other defensive end, who's a high draft pick, who's got uber talent. Who did I say? Oh, Josh Allen, Trayvon Walker. What the? I remember Josh Allen. I don't remember Trayvon. Well, I love Josh Allen. Yeah, I love Josh Allen. I think we both do. He was a stud coming out of Kentucky. You loved him coming out for sure. But obviously, Trayvon Walker, they're just going to get better with another year of experience. And like you said, Ridley coming in, having I love Christian Kirk. I've always liked him. But as your number one, I mean, last year he did it, but, did that really maximize Trevor?
They were still able to battle. They were still able to come back. The deficit that they came back to your Chargers, oh my goodness. That was unbelievable. What a comeback. Yeah. That was amazing. And I just think it's crazy for because like we said in the introductory of this podcast, we wanted you guys to know us a little bit. And I think after this, you can kind of tell which teams and players we support and like. But when I was in high school, I loved the Jags for no reason for about 2 years. And I was really invested in their rebuild, loved when they got Fournette. I got a Fournette jersey. Then, I don't know, it was really weird because I had always rooted for them because I was going to go to school in Florida. And then when I did, Tom Brady went to Tampa. So I just gave up on the Jags completely, turned my back toward them. And then now, all these years later, I'm back on the Jags bandwagon. And I just bought a lot of real estate property today in Jacksonville because of the new stadium that they're building. So a Super Bowl would help that skyrocket. So it would help my bank account as well. But yeah, I hope you guys all enjoyed listening in with the boys. We are going to be here once a week. It may increase based on your comments, your feedback, your subscriptions. So make sure to subscribe, smash the like button, turn that notification bell on because we're also going to be bringing you some small videos. This week we have our top 5 players that move teams, and we have our top 5 dynasty sleeper rookie picks. And we're also, like we said at the beginning, doing a mock draft. I personally love this. I thought it was great. We have not done a video together in about 10 years. We tried making a channel when we were younger, didn't really pan out. And I think that for the first time not recording in 10 years, I think we did a pretty good job. So cheers.
Cheers. I'm excited. I'm excited to meet some new friends and shoot some shit about football.
Hell yeah, guys. Comment below your thoughts. Do you hate our takes? Do you like our takes? They're hot takes. I'm sure you'll get our actual predictions at some point, and we'll see you next week.